Many years ago, when I was a very new priest, only slightly more than a year ordained, one evening there was a ring at the doorbell of the rectory, and I opened the door, and there was a man who clearly was homeless standing there asking for food, said he needed to eat. I had only just arrived at that parish a matter of weeks before, so I really didn't even know where everything was at this point, and so I said to the man I would do my best to get him something, so I shut the door in the rectory. I said, I'll be right back. I shut the door, and I went into the kitchen, and I got a Walmart bag or some plastic bag, and I put 2 apples and 2 oranges, and I cut off, we had one of those really nice honey glazed hams in the refrigerator, and I cut off more than you could eat in 2 sittings, and I put that all in a bag, and I put bread to make sandwiches with it, and we happened to have mustard and mayonnaise packets. I don't know why in the rectory, but we did, and I threw those in there, and plastic utensils, and 4 bottles of water, and I came back with us all in this plastic sack, and I opened the door, and I handed it to the man. I said, here you go. I said, there's more in there than you could possibly eat, in 2 days. And he held the bag, but he never brought his arm back to himself. He just kind of held this out in the air. And he said, kind of defiantly, I wanted Grandy's tickets. And I just was stunned. I said, sir, I don't have Grandy's tickets. Well, the last priest gave me Grandy's tickets. And I said, well, all I have is what I've given you. I don't know where Grandy's tickets are. I don't know who you spoke with. I know I don't have Grandy's tickets. And if they're here somewhere, I'll look in a drawer or 2, but I'm new. I don't know where anything is around here. So I looked in a few drawers, of course, no Grandy's tickets. And he actually tried to hand the bag back to me. And I said, oh, no. You said you were hungry, and I've given you something. What you do with it is your responsibility, but I'm not taking it back. You told me you needed it. I remember that story because of what the gospel speaks to us today. We're hearing today and the rest of the week from John 6, which is that very privileged bread of life discourse, Jesus speaking about how he is the fulfillment of the manna in the desert, and that he speaks of how he will feed his people. Notice in the gospel passage today, and we haven't even gotten into the meat of John 6 yet, but we're getting there in the days ahead, the people listen to Jesus make this proclamation that it wasn't Moses who provided that manna that the ancestors ate in the desert, it was my Father. And they notice a hunger in themselves, and they want to be fed. Sir, give us this bread always. But if you know John 6, and we'll hear this in the days to come here, Jesus has more to tell them about how he will feed them. So initially what we hear today is only this part, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never hunger, and whoever believes in me will never thirst. The people notice a hunger, and they want this food that Jesus says he has, but they will have to also come to accept how they must come to him and how he will feed them. And that's where the problems begin. They're hungry, and they want to demand food, just like the person I met years back on the doorstep of the rectory. But they also want to control the terms under which it's given. And that will not feed you. And that's what we must be crystal clear about as disciples of the Lord. When we think we control demanding the food and how it will be given and what we will do with it, then we are quickly not being fed. We're seeking to fill ourselves. And this is the problem here. I dare say that many of the attitudes we encounter today in the circumstances we are in, and even before these circumstances, speak of an entitled attitude toward how Jesus feeds us. And that's very dangerous, friends. Moments before this Mass started, we were not connected. I'm assuming we are now. And so I thought, oh great, I can say these words and no one's going to hear them because we won't be live streaming. But the live streaming has connected, and so here we are. I think we need to examine ourselves and our hearts. Jesus desires to feed us. If we're smart, we know we need it, but we must submit to how he will feed us. We must submit to him and to his gift. Certainly there are very deep meanings to that, about how we occupy ourselves, what we do with ourselves, how we live our days, how we choose right and wrong. These are the very deep meanings of how we seek to receive what Jesus gives for food. But even some of the less obvious things, maybe we might even call them somewhat superficial. I use that rather loosely. There are attitudes, and you see it in how Holy Communion is distributed under normal circumstances in our parishes, that do not speak the kind of reverence and the receiving of the food that Jesus gives. It's a very entitled, put it in my hands attitude. It's I'm at a party, I've got my hand out like I'm receiving an hors d'oeuvre or something. And it has nothing to do with recognizing the bread of life that truly feeds us. And this is disastrous in the spiritual life. I don't care what anyone says, while someone certainly can receive Holy Communion on the hands in a reverent way, that is possible, it is not as reverent as receiving it while kneeling and on the tongue. It just isn't, and that's as plain as day. And furthermore, this kind of receptivity speaks of I'm controlling the food. I feed myself, and I'm telling you that there's at least a kernel of the gospel in that attitude. That I control the terms under which I'm fed by the Lord. No, we don't. We need to be crystal clear about that. Sir, give us this bread always, and give it in the way we want. No, doesn't work. And this is the kind of debate and the conflict that we'll see in the days ahead in John 6, and I would dare say it plays itself out in our midst, in our day, even now, and as unpopular as it is to say, it plays itself out in the way we handle the Holy Eucharist in the church, and it must stop. And please God, in this odd time frame, maybe, just might cause us to think more deeply about the reverence we owe to the bread of life that is nowhere in any way mere bread, but it is the Son of God who makes himself present, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the gift of the Holy Eucharist. These may not be popular words to be live streaming today, and in that sense I thank God that the first reading was my namesake, St. Stephen, who spoke difficult words and infuriated those who were listening to him, such that they covered their ears and rushed upon him. You'll at least have the decency to let me finish Mass before you rush upon me today or start sending emails because of what you're seeing over the live stream. We need to think about these things. These spiritual realities are not just stories from the Bible that sound kind of nice and religious. They play themselves out here and now. How we relate to the Lord must always be one of submission to him, for he is the Lord of life. We must recognize our hunger, and that draws us to him. But we have to remember, we're coming to the one who saves us and who desires to feed us, and we can only come at his feet with a receptivity to everything that he gives and how he will give it in the manner and in the way that he will do it. That has to be part of our hunger too. It can't just be fill me. It must be, I want to be fed by you in the way you will feed me and in all the things that means to receive your food. To submit myself to you, Lord. May that be ever more the grace that is given to us and that we receive today and in this time frame of Eucharistic fast.